Thank you. I've been asked to get us back on track, so I'm going to cut my remarks a little short. So, India conducted two reckless experiments in 1947. One political, they were forms of technology, one political and one economic. No country had given universal franchise at birth. India and Pakistan, born on the same night, have had very different destinies because 3 million people in India win an election. We've created the world's largest democracy on the infertile soil of the world's most hierarchical society. So that experiment worked out very well. But we made a nutty economic experiment. It was called the 1955 Avadi Resolution or the 1956 Second Five-Year Plan, which essentially means today our labor is handicapped without capital and our capital is handicapped without labor. We are 5th in the world in total GDP, but we are 138th in the world in per capita GDP. Now, what did this teach us? Why did we fail at Industry and Commerce 1.0? It is because there is no such thing as poor people. There are people in poor places, right? An electrician who migrates from Patna to Bangalore gets 5 times more salary. The same electrician migrates to the US, he gets 25 times more salary. So the pathology is not at the level of the individual. It's really at the level of productivity, right? So the most interesting question for Industry and Commerce 2.0 is, why do some countries, why do some places, why do some sectors, why do some professions give you higher wages? At least that's from my perspective. And I would argue that, this is the question which I asked myself when I landed in the US in August '94 for my MBA. These Americans aren't smarter than us. Why are they richer than us? Clearly, I can kick their butt individually, right? Why does Ram Bharose, who works all day, make 50,000 rupees? And why does Joe Sixpack, who watches college football and drink beer, makes $50,000? And it's really about the productivity of 5 things. It's the productivity of states, it's the productivity of cities, it is the productivity of firms, and it is the productivity of individuals. If you think about states, we're in Karnataka, my parents live in UP. Both states have the same GDP, but Karnataka does it with 1/4 the number of people. If you think about cities, if everybody in India lived in Bangalore, then our GDP would be more than China. Bangalore's GDP is $11,000. If you think about firms, when we rank manufacturing companies at the highest, at the largest and smallest, there's a 24 times difference in productivity. If you don't have that productivity, you don't pay the wage premium. If you don't pay the wage premium, you'll never be productive. And obviously, individuals, when you think about which sector they work in, agriculture is 42% of our labor force, but only 14% of our GDP. IT is only 0.8% of our labor force, and it produces 8% of GDP. And obviously, the huge difference in the skills that we have between the number of people. I mean, a graduate would get 4 times different in salary based on many variables with us. So I would submit that India doesn't have a shortage of land, labor, or capital. You could give every Indian household half an acre, and they would fit into Rajasthan and Haryana. We don't have a shortage of labor. 40% of our labor force is Vela. And we do not have a shortage of capital. 50% of India's foreign direct investment since 1947 has come in the last 5 years. 90% of India's venture capital since 1947 has come in the last 10 years. So what is the disease? It's what economists call total factor productivity or solo residual, but most of us just call it innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology. And I think it's important to think about productivity in those terms because sort of formalization, financialization, urbanization, industrialization, and human capital are really a form of technology. If we want India to be prosperous, we can't have 63 million enterprises, 12 million of them don't have an office, 12 million work from home, only 12 million registered for GST, only 1 million paying Social Security, but only 23,500 companies in India with a paid-up capital of more than 10 crores. We can't define urbanization as shoving more people into Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. We only have 52 cities with more than 1 million people. China has 375. We can't have a credit to GDP ratio of 50%, which is where it's been stuck for the last 5 years. But if you look at Industry and Commerce 2.0, there's a new economic order. There's a shift of economic gravity to Asia. You don't have to be Western to be modern anymore. There's a new world of work. The average life expectancy of a Fortune 500 company is now 14. When the first list came out in 1955, it was 64. There's a new world of working from home, though I'm a little skeptical than others, about work from home. We had started with 5% working from home pre-pandemic. We'll probably end up with 20%. I don't think we'll end up with everybody working from home. A CEO I met recently said, Andrew Carnegie in the 1800s was once asked, how many people work at US Steel? And he said about half. That's probably true for the work from home right now, and so we have to be careful about thinking about productivity. I think there's a new world of education. In a world where Google knows everything, knowing is useless, learning how to learn is the key capability. And you've got to think about soft skills being more valuable than hard skills. But soft skills are not taught, they are caught. And that's why the new world of education is much more complex than it was in the past. So if I could think about what could go wrong, I would really say it would be short-term thinking, small thinking, and really selfish thinking in some sense. If you think of Jonas Salk, he was the inventor of the polio vaccine. He said the most important question to ask yourself is, are you being a good ancestor? And as somebody who runs a public company now, balancing the next quarter and quarter century is really, really hard, right? You can maximize the next quarter, you can screw up the next quarter century, you can tell everybody about the next quarter century, but you do have to deliver the last quarter. And I think if you think about it in terms of just the difference between, I was in Kashmir last week, and one of the people there told me कि कश्मीर की बदकिस्मती है कि अमानत और जागीर में सियासत ने they didn't understand the difference between amanat and a jagir. A jagir is yours. You can do what the hell you want, right? The Maharaja of Cooch Behar used to spend 50% of the treasury on Rolls Royce and Cartier. But an amanat is not yours. You're supposed to hand it over in better condition than you got it, right? And I think that's really important in thinking about the challenges of India. I mean, if you're going to be short-term, I just asked a very senior person in Rajasthan, how are you going to pay for your defined benefit pensions? He said, I don't have to pay for it. The chief minister 25 years from now has to pay for it. And I would say that's the view of world as a Jagir, where we have to think about not stealing from our grandchildren and being good ancestors. That's probably the only way. But the only way to be good ancestors is to think about luck, skill, and choices, right? I know lots of lucky people who are skilled. I know lots of people skilled who are unlucky. So I think, when Dumbledore tells Harry Potter in Chamber of Secrets, it is our choices more than our abilities that reveal what we really are. I think we're on track with good choices, and we're starting to see results, right? We've 400 billion of goods exports for the first time. If you think about 50% of foreign direct investment since 1947 in the last 5 years. If you think about services, last year India exported more software than Saudi Arabia did oil. Now that's really important to think about the economic complexity that goes into that argument. And obviously $80 billion of remittances is a form of human capital. India has the highest remittances in the world. So obviously there's a lot of distance to cover. I think, when I landed in the US in 1994, there was a front page article in the Wall Street Journal which said that India is more interesting than important. I hope that journalist is eating the newspaper on which she wrote that, because obviously what's happening in India isn't once in a decade or once in a millennium. It's really once in the lifetime of a country. But we have to be careful. We missed our tryst with destiny. I memorized Pandit Nehru's speech when I was a child. There are 300 million people in India who will never read the newspaper that they deliver, or sit in the car that they clean, or send their kids to the school that they help build. But this is not a problem like cancer or climate change. This is a plumbing problem in some sense, right? And so if you think about industry, what is strength in a 21st century economy? One of my favorite poets is Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. He says, Shama shobhati us bhujang ko jiske paas garal ho. Right? Only snakes with venom can be kind, benevolent, and generous. Only the powerful can be generous. And what is power in a 21st economy? It is really human capital as captured by technology, as captured by productivity, as captured by entrepreneurship. And now that I think policy embraces all three of them, I think things look good for India at 100. Thank you.